Sometimes the most painful thing is not being disliked for something you did. It is being quietly resented for something you are. You enter a room with no intention to compete, no desire to be above anyone, no plan to take attention from anybody, and still something changes. A face tightens. A voice becomes flatter. A compliment feels like it has a hidden edge. Someone who was warm a moment ago becomes strangely careful around you, as if your presence disturbed something they were trying not to feel. And because you are an empath, your first thought is usually not, maybe this belongs to them. Your first thought is, what did I do wrong? But sometimes you did nothing wrong. Sometimes your presence simply becomes a mirror for something another person has not made peace with. And instead of looking at the discomfort inside themselves, they quietly place the blame on you. This is what makes hidden resentment so confusing. You expect resentment to come after a mistake. You expect it after betrayal, arrogance, cruelty, or disrespect. But an empath can be kind, careful, thoughtful, and still feel that strange emotional coldness from someone who cannot explain why they feel uncomfortable around them. It may happen at a family dinner, when you speak with more confidence than usual and someone makes a small joke about how different you have become. It may happen at work, when your idea gets noticed and the person who used to smile at you suddenly starts watching you instead of supporting you. It may happen in a friendship, when your healing makes someone feel left behind. It may happen in love, when the person who once admired your sensitivity begins to resent the very depth that helped them feel safe. And the empath wonders, why does my presence bother people when I am not trying to hurt anyone? Because sometimes people are not reacting to your mistake. They are reacting to your freedom. That kind of freedom does not have to be loud. It can be quiet. It can be the freedom of no longer begging for approval, the freedom of no longer laughing at jokes that hurt you, the freedom of no longer making yourself emotionally convenient, the freedom of walking into a room and not immediately shrinking to make everyone else comfortable. To a healthy person, that freedom feels inspiring. To an unhealed person, it can feel threatening. An empath often carries a kind of emotional honesty that people can feel before they can explain it. You notice tone, you notice small pauses, you notice when someone says the right words with the wrong energy. You notice the sadness under anger, the insecurity under criticism, the control hidden under concern. You are not always trying to expose anyone, but your nervous system has learned to read what others hide. For people who live behind masks, that can feel uncomfortable. Not because you are dangerous, but because your presence makes hiding feel harder. A person who performs confidence may feel uneasy around your quiet sincerity. A person who avoids vulnerability may resent the way you still feel deeply. A person who survives by pretending nothing affects them may dislike how naturally you notice what is emotionally real. They may not say, your presence makes me feel exposed. They may say, you are too sensitive. They may say, you think too deeply. They may say, you make everything emotional. They may say, you are difficult to understand. But often the deeper translation is, I do not know how to be around someone who makes me aware of what I have buried. That is projection. A person feels something inside themselves, but instead of owning it, they place it onto you. Their discomfort becomes your supposed problem. Their insecurity becomes your alleged arrogance. Their envy becomes your attitude. Their fear of being seen becomes your intensity. And if you are an empath who already tends to self-blame, projection can pull you into a painful loop. You start reviewing the whole interaction. Did I say too much? Did I look too happy? Did I sound proud? Did I make them feel small? Was I too quiet? Too open? Too confident? Too honest? You begin adjusting yourself before anyone even asks. You lower your excitement. You hide your good news. You soften your opinions. You pretend not to notice the strange energy in the room. You make your presence easier to digest, hoping the coldness will stop. But shrinking does not heal resentment. It only teaches people that their discomfort has power over your identity. That is the trap. The empath thinks they are being kind by making themselves smaller. But often, they are training themselves to disappear every time someone else feels exposed. Maybe you have seen this in a friendship. You share something good that happened, and for a split second, your friend's face changes. It is quick, almost invisible. Then they say, that is nice, but the warmth is gone. Soon they change the subject to their own struggle, or they make a small joke that makes your joy feel embarrassing. You leave feeling guilty for being happy. Maybe you have seen it in your family. You are calmer now, more selective, less reactive. You no longer let every comment pull you into old guilt. And someone says, you think you are better than us now. But you never said that. You simply stop playing the old role. You stop being the one who absorbs attention, keeps the peace, and apologizes first just to make everyone comfortable again. Their coldness was not proof that you failed. It was proof that your growth interrupted an old role. Maybe you have seen it at work. You contribute an idea in a meeting. You say it simply, not trying to impress anyone. Later, someone else repeats the same idea with more confidence and receives support. When you gently point out that you had already mentioned it, the room becomes awkward. The person who copied you acts offended, as if your clarity is the problem, not their behavior. That is when you realize resentment does not always come from weakness. Sometimes it comes from being seen as capable by people who preferred you uncertain. Maybe you have felt it in a romantic relationship. In the beginning, they loved your empathy. They said you understood them like no one else. They loved how you listened, how you noticed, how you cared. But when your intuition began noticing inconsistency, when your sensitivity needed respect, when your boundaries asked them to become more honest, the same depth they once praised became the thing they attacked. They liked your empathy when it comforted them. They resented it when it protected you. This is one of the most painful truths for an empath. Some people do not resent your kindness until your kindness develops standards. As long as your empathy is available without limit, it feels useful to them. As long as your sensitivity helps them feel understood, they call it beautiful. As long as your forgiveness keeps giving them access, they call you loving. But when that same empathy begins saying, "This is not safe for me," suddenly you are too much, you are not too much. You are just too honest for people who survive by pretending. And honesty can make people uncomfortable when their lives are built around avoidance. This does not mean you are always right. It does not mean every uncomfortable person is jealous or toxic. A mature empath must be able to ask, did I harm someone? Did I speak carelessly? Did I assume too much? Is there something I need to repair? Real emotional intelligence includes accountability, but accountability is different from automatic self-blame. Accountability says, I can look honestly at my behavior. Self-blame says, if someone feels uncomfortable around me, I must be the problem. Accountability helps you grow. Self-blame makes you disappear. Many empaths learn self-blame early. They grew up reading the room before they read themselves. They learned to notice the parent's mood, the sibling's tension, the sudden silence, the hidden disappointment. They learned that safety came from adjusting quickly. Be quieter, be easier, be helpful, be good. Do not add stress. Do not ask for too much. Do not make anyone uncomfortable. So later in life, when someone secretly resents their presence, the empath's body does not treat it like an adult misunderstanding. The body treats it like an old alarm. The cold face says danger. The changed tone says fix it. The awkward silence says become smaller. The delayed reply says you may be abandoned. The subtle criticism says earn your place again. This is why hidden resentment can feel so powerful. It reaches into the old place where the empath first learned that love could disappear if they did not manage everyone else's emotions. But healing begins when you pause and ask a better question. Is this my responsibility or is this their projection? That question does not make you careless. It makes you clear, because sometimes you truly do need to repair something. And when that happens, repair is beautiful. But sometimes the only thing you did was become more visible, more peaceful, more boundaried, more alive, more honest. And the person's resentment is not about harm. It is about the discomfort your growth creates in them. Some people only felt close to you when you were small enough not to disturb their wounds. When you were unsure, they felt needed. When you were anxious, they felt important. When you were overgiving, they felt safe receiving without giving back. When you were always available, they never had to practice respect. When you doubted yourself, they could influence you more easily. But when you begin to heal, the emotional contract changes. You no longer perform smallness. You no longer apologize for having needs. You no longer laugh at every cruel joke. You no longer answer every message with urgency. You no longer make your life revolve around making emotionally immature people comfortable. And the people who benefited from your old pattern may not celebrate your freedom. They may resent it. They may say, you have changed, as if change is a betrayal. But sometimes change is the first honest thing that has happened in the relationship. Sometimes change means you are finally no longer abandoning yourself to keep a connection alive. This is where many empaths need to understand something deeply. Being resented does not always mean you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it means you are no longer serving a role that kept someone else comfortable. There is a difference between being loved and being used for emotional regulation. When someone loves you, they may struggle with your growth, but they will eventually make room for it. They will reflect. They will ask questions. They will care about your experience. They will not need you wounded in order to feel connected to you. But when someone uses you for emotional regulation, your healing feels like a threat. Your peace removes their power. Your confidence removes their position. Your boundary removes their access. Your self-trust removes their ability to keep you confused. That is when secret resentment begins to show. It shows in little comments. You are acting different. You are not as humble as you used to be. You are becoming too serious. You think you know everything now. You are not fun anymore. You used to be nicer. Sometimes nicer means easier to drain. You did nothing wrong by becoming harder to drain. That sentence can settle something in the body. Because many empaths mistake being drained for being loving. They think if they are exhausted, they must have cared enough. If they are anxious, they must be invested. If they are always available, they must be loyal. But love is not measured by how much of yourself you lose. Love that requires your disappearance is not love. It is a pattern. And when you stop feeding that pattern, people who benefited from it may call your healing a problem. This is why you need a stronger relationship with your own reality. Not everyone will understand your presence. Not everyone will interpret your calm correctly. Not everyone will celebrate your healing. Not everyone will know what to do with a person who feels deeply but no longer abandons themselves. So your task is not to become someone no one resents. That is impossible. Your task is to stop letting resentment decide how much of yourself you are allowed to be. The next time you feel that strange coldness from someone, do not rush to explain yourself. Do not immediately apologize just to soften the room. Do not shrink your voice before you have even checked the facts. Instead, take out a notebook and write 2 columns. In the first column, write, what did I actually do? In the second column, write, what might they be reacting to in themselves? This is not about blaming them. It is about separating reality from reflexive guilt. Maybe you actually interrupted them. Maybe you dismissed something important. Maybe you need to repair your tone. If so, repair it with maturity. But maybe all you did was share good news. Maybe all you did was set a boundary. Maybe all you did was receive appreciation. Maybe all you did was stop being available at midnight. Maybe all you did was become calm in a situation where they expected you to panic. When you see the facts clearly, you interrupt the old pattern of making yourself guilty for other people's discomfort. This practice teaches your nervous system that not every cold reaction is an emergency. Not every awkward silence is a verdict. Not every changed tone is proof that you are wrong. Sometimes the room changes because you are no longer playing the part that kept everyone else emotionally comfortable. And yes, that can feel lonely at first. When you stop shrinking, you may lose the warmth of people who only knew how to be warm when you were small. You may lose certain invitations, certain conversations, certain versions of closeness. You may feel the ache of no longer being the person everyone can easily reach, use, and define. But not every loss is punishment. Some losses are space being returned to you, space to breathe, space to think, space to hear your own voice, space to stop performing harmlessness, space to discover who you are when you are not constantly adjusting to someone else's unspoken resentment. This is where the empath begins to become rooted. Rooted does not mean hard. It does not mean cold. It does not mean superior. It means you no longer leave yourself every time someone else becomes uncomfortable. You can feel the tension and stay with your own body. You can notice the resentment and not immediately volunteer to fix it. You can hear the comment and not build your identity around it. You can let someone misunderstand you without turning your whole life into a defense. That is not indifference. That is inner safety. And inner safety is what many empaths were never taught. They were taught outer safety. Keep the peace, read the room, make others comfortable, do not upset anyone. But inner safety says, I can remain connected to myself even when someone else is displeased. That is a new kind of strength. Imagine a woman entering a room where she used to become small. She notices the old faces, the old expectations, the old emotional weather. Someone looks her up and down. Someone makes a small comment about how confident she seems now. In the past, she would have laughed nervously and softened herself. This time she smiles gently, not to please them, but because she is still inside herself. Nothing dramatic happens, no speech, no argument, no performance, but everything has changed. Because she did not abandon herself. That is what secretly resentful people often feel. They feel that you are no longer leaving yourself to meet them where they are. And if they are used to your self-abandonment, your self-possession will feel like rejection. But it is not rejection. It is alignment. It is you finally standing in your own life without asking every wounded person for permission. This does not make you better than them. It makes you responsible for yourself. It means you can have compassion for someone's insecurity without handing them control over your presence. It means you can understand their pain without becoming a place where they discharge it. It means you can wish them healing without letting their resentment become the emotional climate you live inside. There will be people who can grow with you. They may have their own insecurities. but they will not make your growth the enemy. They may feel challenged by your change, but they will talk to you with respect. They may need time to adjust, but they will not require you to become wounded again so they can feel close. Those are the people you can build with. And then there are people who can only relate to you through the role you played in their life. The listener, the fixer, the soft place, the one who never says no, the one who always understands, the one who absorbs tension and asks for very little. When you stop playing that role, they do not know who they are with you anymore. That is not your failure. That is the relationship revealing its conditions. The painful truth is that some people were never attached to your full self. They were attached to the part of you that served their emotional comfort. They liked your empathy without your needs. They liked your patience without your limits. They liked your insight when it helped them, not when it saw them clearly. And when the full version of you arrives, resentment can appear because the old benefit is gone. This is why empaths must learn selective access. Not everyone deserves the most tender version of you. Not everyone deserves your private thoughts. Not everyone deserves your emotional availability. Not everyone deserves to know what you are building, healing, grieving, or becoming. Privacy is not coldness. Privacy is protection for what is still sacred. Share your joy with people who do not punish it. Share your dreams with people who do not plant quiet doubt inside them. Share your pain with people who do not use it later. Share your growth with people who do not need to reduce it so they can feel safe. This is not paranoia. It is discernment. Paranoia says, everyone is against me. Discernment says, I will watch patterns before I give access. Paranoia closes your heart. Discernment gives your heart a door. Paranoia makes love impossible. Discernment makes love safer, and safe love will feel different. Safe people do not make you feel guilty for becoming more alive. They do not need your light dim to sit beside you. They can celebrate your confidence without comparing it to their insecurity. They can hear your boundary without treating it like an attack. They can be honest with you without trying to make you feel ashamed for existing. With safe people, your body does not have to prepare a defense. You do not leave every conversation replaying what you did wrong. You do not feel like your joy needs to be edited. You do not feel watched, measured, or emotionally tested. You feel allowed to be human. For an empath, that can feel unfamiliar. Peace can feel strange when tension has been normal. Respect can feel suspicious when you are used to earning warmth. A healthy connection can feel almost too simple when your nervous system has learned to associate love with emotional labor. Give yourself time to adjust to safe rooms. You may still feel the old urge to shrink. You may still feel guilty when someone seems uncomfortable. You may still want to over-explain, over-give, or repair what was never yours. Healing does not mean those old reflexes vanish overnight. Healing means you notice them and choose differently. You choose to stay with yourself. You choose to ask, what is mine here and what is not? You choose to stop making yourself responsible for every unspoken emotion in the room. You choose to become rooted. And rooted presence is very different from defensive presence. Defensive presence is tense. It is always preparing to be misunderstood. Rooted presence is calm. It does not need to control how everyone sees you. It simply refuses to disappear. When you become rooted, some people will still resent you. But their resentment will no longer organize your identity. They can think you're too much. You can still know you're honest. They can think you have changed. You can still know you are healing. They can think your boundary is pride. You can still know it is protection. They can think your peace is coldness. You can still know it is recovery. This is freedom. Not the freedom of being liked by everyone. The freedom of no longer becoming smaller for people who secretly need you small, because your presence is not a problem just because someone feels exposed by it. Your sensitivity is not wrong just because someone cannot meet it. Your intuition is not a burden just because it makes dishonesty uncomfortable. Your growth is not arrogance just because it disrupts a role you were never meant to stay in forever. You did nothing wrong by being deep. You did nothing wrong by becoming peaceful. You did nothing wrong by no longer performing weakness so others can feel strong. You did nothing wrong by choosing relationships where your nervous system does not have to fight for breath. You did nothing wrong by becoming harder to drain. And maybe this is the deepest shift. You stop trying to make your presence harmless. You stop trying to become so easy, so agreeable, so edited, so emotionally convenient that no one ever has to confront themselves around you. You are not here to be a blank wall for other people's projections. You are not here to be a quiet container for resentment that others refuse to name. You are not here to be loved only when you are less alive. You are here to become whole. And wholeness will always disturb the people who benefited from your fragmentation. Let that be okay. Let your presence become honest without becoming harsh. Let your kindness become protected without becoming closed. Let your empathy become mature without becoming bitter. Let your life become rooted enough that hidden resentment can no longer pull you out of yourself. Some people will never admit that they resented you because of what your presence awakened in them. They may keep calling it something else. They may call it concern, honesty, discomfort, personality difference, or your supposed attitude. You do not need their confession to trust what your body has been telling you. You only need to stop betraying yourself to keep them comfortable, because there is a life beyond being constantly misread, a life beyond scanning faces for permission, a life beyond apologizing for the space your soul naturally takes, a life where your presence is not treated like a problem, but welcomed as something real, warm, steady, and alive. That life begins when you stop asking, how do I make them comfortable with me, and begin asking, can I remain connected to myself here? If the answer is no, listen. If your body keeps shrinking, listen. If your joy keeps closing, listen. If your peace keeps disappearing, listen. Your body is not trying to make you suspicious. It is trying to bring you back to truth. And the truth is simple. You did nothing wrong by becoming someone who can no longer be controlled through coldness, guilt, resentment, or subtle rejection. You did not become difficult. You became present. You did not become arrogant. You became aware. You did not become cold. You became careful with your warmth. You did not become unloving. You stopped offering love in places where it kept being used against you. That is not the end of your empathy. That is the beginning of a wiser empathy. An empathy that still feels but does not absorb everything. An empathy that still cares but does not carry everyone. An empathy that still sees the wound but no longer volunteers to be wounded by it. This is how the empath becomes free. Not by proving everyone wrong. Not by making resentful people understand. Not by becoming harder than the world, but by becoming so rooted in truth that hidden resentment can no longer convince them to abandon themselves. And in the next video, you will understand why the people who once drained you often feel your absence the most when you finally stop making your presence easy to access.